Welcome to episode number 28. Nick Granville in Wellington, myself in Auckland, and a very special guest, Leon Todd, all the way from Perth. And welcome, Leon. Lovely to have you on the show.
Nice to be on.
Avid viewers of your channel and the Gear podcast for a long time now. So yeah, it's awesome to have you with us. I was just thinking to myself, it's like really funny that I found your channel looking for old digital shit like the lexicons and eventides, and Nick probably came across yours looking for new digital stuff like the fractal stuff. So a man who straddles both eras of the
a man who can make all of that stuff sound equally as crap. That's me. That's what I do.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, hey, and I've been in one of those rooms that I can see, so it's good to see all the stuff and all those kind of things. But yeah, that was awesome. I remember speaking to Nick and him going, "Oh man, if you get a chance to hang out with Warren, he made me one of the best curries I've ever had in my life." And now I can tell people I hung out with Warren and I had one of the best curries I've ever had in my life. So yeah, I've got the insider scoop on what to do and what not to do now. So that was, man, honestly, like once a week now, I basically repeat what you did. It's so good. I was able to, it's like when you hang out with someone and play guitar and you're like, how do you do that? Oh, all right, I'm never not doing that now.
Yeah, I got the recipe as well too, so I have to be honest, it's a favorite.
Yeah, maybe I should put a link to the recipe or make a YouTube video. Like, this is how you make that curry.
Yeah, like Tom Bukovac, right?
Do it. That would be amazing. And just have some of your albums playing underneath it.
Oh yeah,
that would be great slow TV. And you could have, I don't know if they sell that stuff on Amazon, right? But you could have like an affiliate link to the,
the curry packet.
You'd be in with big curry paste.
And what have you been up to, Leon? You been playing? What's been happening?
Yeah, what ain't Leon been doing? That's been the theme of my
Noosa Guitar Festival. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good fun. So good to go over to Queensland and, experience that, which at this time of year is just beautiful. It's very, very similar. It's like a parallel universe to WA, right? Where the main difference is just humid in Queensland. So no matter what day, and there was freak thunderstorms. Well, to me, freak thunderstorms. People are like, man, this is just how the weather is over here. So yeah, it was good. A lot of the people they got out for it were awesome. So many great players and very chilled out vibe. It was nice when you do something like that and sort of most styles are represented. I've been to a few things like that where you're the alien playing with distortion, but I wasn't the only person, with like the gain on an amp up above 0.5. So that was nice. But yeah, just loads of tasty players and, there was some great blues and bluegrass and jazz and things like that. So it was a pretty balanced program. I went in on the Sunday and they had a couple of classical players in there as well who were, warming up, doing their thing, which sounded incredible in the green room. I was sort of walked in, I was like, whoa. It was like being on the set of it was like being inside a movie or something. It's really, really beautiful to hear. So yeah, it kind of reminded me that there's, I guess for some people, life besides distortion and reverb and all those things. But yeah, doing that. And then when's the last time I think the last time I obviously hung out with Warren would have been in March. So I've been away from home a lot, playing that show, and we've had some local Ragdoll shows, and yeah, it's been good. I've just been splitting my time between being away or being at home, just like making videos and scheduling them. So it feels good when you see like 35 videos pre-recorded and listed, but then it's also terrifying because you go, well, I need to actually make sure, there's no mistakes in them or things like that. And, the day before it comes out, you watch it, you're like, oh, I need to go back and re-edit it. So, yeah, the usual madness, but more on my end.
And you, I really enjoyed the interview thing you did with Larry Mitchell the other day. That was fantastic, man, with you and Troy.
He's so good, isn't he? He's
such a dude.
So good. I did 2 workshops in Brisbane. So, again, went over to Noosa. I flew out of Brisbane, so I ended up teeing it up with Independent Music, who are the Fractal distributor, and Larry just happened to be in town. So we did 2 workshops together, which were awesome. It was a really fun format. I don't think I've done workshops where it's sort of one person does their thing for 45 minutes and then the next person does it for 45 minutes and then, you know, maybe you take some questions. And that's cool. But we just kind of, he was like, how do you want to do this? And I was like, I don't know, how do you want to do it? And he's like, oh, we'll just, you know, I'll play something and talk about it and you play something and talk about it. So that was, I really enjoyed that. Yeah. Sort of, if I get the chance to do that again with anyone, it's just awesome having that. I feel like you don't get too ear fatigued by listening to one person too much. You get that contrast. Then as soon as you're sort of like, oh, this is cool, but I'm getting sick of, again, distortion and reverb, you get a different take on it. So, yeah, he's just, you know, he's got that thing, you know, some people play and you're like, I can make that note on a guitar, but it sounds better when you do it.
Yeah, he's definitely, there's some magic with him, isn't there? I was just thinking, it's like total ebony and ivory, isn't it, you two?
Absolutely, especially coming out of winter for me, you know, where I just don't see the sun. So, yeah, and we got to go and see Cold Chisel after the second workshop because I was like, oh, awesome. Larry, I've got a few tickets to this. And this was a last minute thing. I was like trying to explain that band to an American and the other person who was kind of driving around, another American. So yeah, that was cool to see, like the most Australian band of all time with a pair of Americans. And yeah, I mean, we got to hang out after the show and, you know, turns out their drummer, Larry, had sort of come up with in New York, you know, so they hadn't seen each other for like 30 or 40 years. So that was a bit of a trip. Yeah. Sort of like everyone in that band has, you know, they don't have to be as like cordial and gracious with their time either, but they are. They're just, you know, laid back blokes. And you're like, man, you just played a ball tearing 2-hour gig to like 20,000 people. And it's 15 minutes later and you're just like hanging out with a beer talking about, I don't know, reactive loads or something like that. It's just like doing this. So yeah, that's pretty cool. What about you guys? It's been keeping you busy, boys?
So basically my first band, we are reuniting after like a couple of years, I think.
Wow.
Sometime in a couple of weeks. So we were opening for Extreme, like Talk About Pressure. So I was actually going back and practicing some of the old stuff, you know, making sure I still know it. So yeah,
man, if you when you're opening for them, you've got to play one of their tunes before they do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and get
that's
kicked off stage.
That's the unspoken law with supports, right? Like, actually, play the best song.
No, here's what I was thinking: we should play some of the Van Halen 3 stuff.
Yeah. So there's a New Zealand band. Fun. I won't mention who they are, but they they pretty much rip off styles of music of everyone, right? And at the New Zealand Music Awards, a friend of mine put a band together to play all the little stings before the thing, and he played all of the songs that they ripped off and the stings before the show, knowing that they were there and they were going to win all the awards. Yeah. Like they've got one that sounds like Peaceful Easy Feeling, they've got a reggae, you know what I mean? So it's funny, man. That'll be an awesome gig. Nuno Betancourt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I mean, they were a huge influence. Actually, I think most people know them for like the second and third albums, but that fourth one, you know, Waiting for the Punchline. That's the one that really like, you know, got my ear, because I think the grunge thing had already well and truly hit, and that was maybe their reaction to it, because it was really stripped down. All the gloss was gone, you know, just the band in a room kind of thing. And that was like a huge turning point, at least for me. So yeah, it'll be awesome to see them.
Oh man, Porno Graffiti, like that album was I mean, Get the Funk Out, that stuff was like game changer stuff for me. I loved that. I still do. You know, that'll be amazing.
And I mean, awesome. Nuno is just such a phenomenal rhythm guitar player as well. You know, like that's the thing that I was like, well, I know the guy can, you know, shred obviously, but his playing is so, and was so, like, someone that young had no right to be that groovy and funky, and the whole band, and, you know, and to be able to sing, and he's a handsome dude, is just, you know, you just want to punch him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, go on, you'll get your chance, Warren.
Yeah. We'll see how that goes. What about yourself, Nick? You got some cool stuff coming up?
Wellington Jazz Club this weekend, which will be interesting. It's with Roger Fox's partner. Roger had actually booked the gig, but of course he passed away. When was it? A few months ago. So I don't know how that's going to go, because normally he's the guy that steers the ship. But without him steering the ship, it's like, are we captainless at the moment? So Yeah, it'll be interesting. But I had a session today for a trumpeter. It was like a dance track, Saint Germain type stuff, and he just wanted me to play wacky sounds. So I basically a whole lot of wah wah and a whole lot of delay, and so I did like an edge thing like you two, and then actually had a session last Friday too. So there's been a bit of session work lately, which has been great. And that was for a children's show.
Oh wow!
A children's song, yeah. And they said they've got a music video they're going to make, and they've got a snail that's going to be the guitar player in the video. So they said, can I do something wild? So it was like I picked up the guitar and was like, you know, with the whammy bar and all this wildness, you know, and the producer was laughing his ass off the whole time. So I was like, excellent.
Got him. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, isn't it funny how just children's music and rock music are, I mean, they're basically the same thing, right? I had someone describe Twisted Sister as, you know, the Wiggles for adults.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly what his song was like. It was like a chuggy kind of rock thing. And it was like, go to sleep, you must really go to sleep. Because he's a funny guy, this guy that wrote it. So yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Except you played it wrong, like everyone plays it wrong. Me included. For years
Nick will show us the correct way.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Oh, there you go.
Or it doesn't sound right.
Yeah. You got to have the droney drone, right? Oh,
exactly.
Man, that's great. Just make guitar noises for kids shows. Done. Yeah. This is what I was born to do.
And both those sessions have been in my studio here too, which is nice because most sessions nowadays people send files or put something on, I send it back. So you're kind of waiting for feedback, and maybe they might take them a day, and then they'll come back and go, yes, cool, or can you do this? Can you know? Whereas this, it's like you instantly got that energy from someone, and kind of like Tim Pierce, you know how Tim has his setup with the person facing right at him, because you get that energy from another person. It's great.
Hey, how was the I saw you were doing the music for, what's that video game? I should know it off the top of my head, right? Stardew Valley.
Oh, Stardew Valley. Yeah, that was great fun, man. That was wild. It was like, I didn't know the game, right? I'm not much of a gamer in that sense. Like, I mean, there's some games I'll play on Xbox or whatever, but that wasn't one I knew. And then so I went there and we rehearsed during the day, and it was a small orchestra, like a 20-piece chamber orchestra. No drum kit, no timekeeper. It was all, you know, I was playing acoustic guitar mostly, a banjo on a song, and then electric guitar on a song. And, you know, it's kind of this music that's largely almost like loops, because, you know, you might go into a room and then it's got a loop for a while, and then you go into the next room and it moves to the next sound. So the music in itself is kind of like loops. And we got there and there was no screen behind us. So I thought they'd play like the game back there or something. And we walked in and everyone just went berserk. It was like they thought they were seeing the Rolling Stones or something. And they were just like, woo, you know. And we played the first theme and they just erupted. And I'm like, what? Like, what? Wow, you know, kind of crazy. And then some dude proposed to his girlfriend during the concert too, and apparently they met on the game. She's from Texas, he's from Australia. They came to New Zealand to go to that concert to get engaged. I was like, wow, wild.
Yeah, I'm really familiar with my wife got that for a birthday present last year from a friend, so she played it a lot. So I was just hearing the music and I was like, man, these tunes are like, this is super catchy. And I think that basically it's one guy pretty much made the game, wrote the soundtrack. You know, it's designed as an old school, like, you know, something that would be on Game Boy, so a very limited sound set and things like that. But it's pretty amazing that just those limitations on there, it sounds like a game that's been around, or the music sounds like it's been around for 40 or 50 years, not 10 or something like that. So yeah, they really nailed it. So yeah, I just remember seeing that and I was like, that'll be a cool gig. And I imagine going in not knowing anything about it as well, the surprise would have been pretty novel.
Yeah, totally. I've done a few of those sort of things before, but never quite like that. Like usually they're more like, you know, film soundtracks, or if they're game soundtracks, they're more high energy, you know.
Right.
So to get that from largely what felt like a classical program was kind of unusual. I've got another one coming up in about a month. I'm doing the movie The Holiday with an orchestra here. So
nice.
I don't know that movie at all, so if you guys do, And last year they did the same thing, but they did that movie Love Actually, which I also didn't know, but I spent the whole night watching it over my shoulder.
Yep, that's a bit of a. I mean, that's a classic as well, and it's like, you know, it's now a classic holiday movie as well.
Yes, and it's fun doing that kind of stuff. It's like I just love playing with orchestras, you know, because usually guitar you're right in the middle, right at the front, so you've got all this lush around you. It's just beautiful. Yeah. And what about you? What have you got coming up, Leon? Is December looking busy? Is November?
What is happening in December? That's a good question. I've got a few, you know, you can't move 2 steps without somehow being involved in the mining industry in Western Australia. So we've got a couple of shows on, you know, most of the sites are remote, so they're fly in, fly out. So the camps where everyone camp, it's more like an open air, like big time prison vibes, basically, you know. So like really remote. There's often, because they're often in quite remote places and adjacent to environmentally sensitive areas, right? A lot of the time they'll actually be fenced in as well. So, and there's high security. It's quite jarring the first time you do it. Like, man, you guys are just like the world's best paid forced labor or something. So a lot of the mining camps they've got PAs and drum kits, and most of them will have a music room as well, so people can get in there and, you know, after a 12-hour shift in the heat, you can go and play some guitar or bash away on the drums. So yeah, surprisingly they have loads of stuff, so they're normally pretty easy gigs. So we've got a few of those coming up, and we've got an all original show a few hours south of Perth coming up with a couple of local bands and just some friends. It'll just be like a fun pre-Christmas kind of thing. And then I'm doing the show I've been doing the last year, Club Cabaret. They're doing a Perth season for Perth Fringe from the middle of January till the middle of Feb. So yeah, that's coming up, which will be super cool because it'll actually just be nice. All my friends and family can come and see what I've been doing with my life pretty much for the last year. Yeah, and then, I mean, the YouTube thing is its own animal. You know, you just keep feeding the beast, you know, and then it doesn't come and rip your head off in the middle of the night or something like that. So yeah, doing that. You know, you mentioned the gear podcast. I've really been enjoying doing that the last year with Troy. We've had both of you guys on, so
it's awesome. I love the gear podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. And yeah, it's fun. A mate of mine said recently, it's like, how do you keep coming up with ideas for videos? You know, just sort of like, I think it's, I was explaining to someone recently, I think it occupies that part of my brain, that same part of my brain that like writing music does. Just the difference is, you know, and you guys know this well, you want to put an album out, you want to put a single out, it takes time, right?
Yeah.
You know, you get all excited about it when you're in the jam room, you have a new idea, and then you workshop it, and then, you know, it sits around for a while, and then you finally think you've finished the song, and then you record it, and you're working with a producer, and maybe you change some things, and then it gets mixed, and the mix process takes a few weeks, and all the revisions. At this point, you're sick of it, and you're ready for it to be out of your life, and you're like, oh, we should probably, how are we going to promote this thing? So, yeah, I like that. I like that we just like the same brain muscle gets scratched when I make a YouTube video or something. That's the reason I do it. And yeah, I mean, you'll see stuff, you know, whether it'll be, I don't know, you'll put up something about jazz or something, Nick, on your live stream, or Warren puts up a video and you get super pumped about it. So you want to try and like incorporate some of those ideas into it. So yeah, it's always, for that, I feel like for me, I'm always just trying to find ways to get better at it.
Man, yeah, I got to say, with your videos too, like the level of care and the production and all that kind of side of it too is super slick. You know, you've always had a really good catchy intro, and the whole thing, like, it's, to me, it just comes across very slick right from the beginning, you know. But it doesn't seem contrived slick, if you know what I mean. When you see some people who are so slick that they look like everything would slide off them, it's not that. It's like, it's slick as in you've just nail it. Do you know what I mean? It's really intriguing, and your pacing and your whole thing. You know, I really don't know what I'm doing with any of it, so it's watching your stuff is really inspiring.
Well, the weird thing is, I noticed this a couple of months ago. was, doing an intro for a video, right? You talk some amount of time, and I'll go through and I'll edit my videos and I'll put timestamps up for them. And the number of times that, like, the end of a section to the next section when I'm talking is like within a few seconds of exactly 1 minute or exactly 2 minutes. I think I've just got to that point where I've had to edit myself so much when I'm talking that it's almost like while I'm doing it, you're just like, I'm going to have to fix this in post, so I'll just fix it before it comes out of my brain. It's a really weird... I'm sure you've both had that feeling when you're playing guitar, like you're 2/3 of the way through a solo and you're like, oh, no, like... I'm going to do this bend, but I can feel I don't quite have my finger on the string correctly. So I'm just going to do something else here, and I'll just try and catch the last end of it, and I'm not going to fix it. I'm just going to live with it. There's a lot of just living with it for me.
Did it take you a while to learn how to look at the camera?
Yeah, man. I'm still terrible at it. Still terrible at it. Because the camera that I use is it has one of the flip out screens. So you always end up looking just past the lens. So,
but apparently someone told me that's exactly what you're supposed to do, because if you look right into a lens, you look a bit creepy. So it's like, just look shy of the
right.
I had someone leave a comment on a YouTube video once when I used to use my real camera before I did this daily stuff, and he said, "Stop staring at me." I thought that was quite a funny thing. I was like,
my favorite one was someone left a comment the other day. There's a guy who's like a bit of a habitual shit stirrer on the channel, and I haven't blocked him because I get a kick out of the dumb stuff he says. And I'd just been to the gym, so I had I had a singlet on, or what Americans would call a tank top, right? Because a singlet is what wrestlers wear, which I learnt when I kept talking about singlets the first time I went to the States. But I digress. He was like, Leon, please put a t-shirt on. You look like a gay man from the 80s. And it's and it's not good for rock. And I was like, man, have you ever seen an 80s rock music video? Like, it's what
Poison,
are you talking
Skid
about?
Row,
But also like goals in life, because two of my favorite performers ever in the history of music are gay men who were big in the 80s, like Freddie Mercury, Rob Halford. I'm like,
there you go.
What? This comment says more about you and your insecurities than it does about me, because I'm gonna roll with that and take that as a compliment. And like, it's 2024. What world are you living in, bro? And also, you're the one uncomfortable. Maybe some introspection is worth taking the time to do that. Or when someone's like, oh, what are you playing those dad rock licks for?
Dad rock is like, the best
what?
Rock.
Is there any other type of rock? Like, like literally rock music is, well, we now know that it's for children, but it's for children because their dads are into it, right? So, or my favorite one, sounds like Nickelback. It's like, man, if I had sold 1/100th of what they've ever sold in my life, I'd be living very, very comfortably. All these things where it's like, funny how pieces of language, whether it's musical or otherwise, they're so widespread that they end up saying more about the person saying them than actually meaning anything, because it's such a generic thing. Like, that's a dad rock lick. It's like, okay, cool. You just told me a lot about yourself and nothing about what the person is actually playing or doing. So yeah, I get a kick out of it. I don't know if you guys ever look at in YouTube Studio, there's a tab where it has the automatically held for review comments.
Oh, no. Maybe I should.
You can set it up, So I've got it set up because it doesn't happen that much anymore, but people posting links in your videos.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Drove me nuts. So I just have a filter on there where it's like, if there's a link, it just puts it held for review sort of thing. But often what happens if someone writes a sentence and they don't put a space between the full stop, it will turn it into a link. So you get angry people being like, why are you deleting my comments? You're like, oh, hang on. Let me check the held for review. Okay, cool. You can't type. That's all it is, So yeah, I do get a kick out of that sometimes. Sometimes you find some very, very not nice things in there, but most of the time it's just like, oh, that's really cool. Hey, here's a link to me playing that amp, and it'll be an iPhone on the floor of a third-story building, and they're in the second story or something. It's like, okay, cool. I'm going to allow this. You're having a crack, but yeah, sometimes it's just like, click here to increase the size of your frets.
I had someone just the other day, a couple of days ago, do that. I posted a video showing on that pedal show. They had Robin Ford in there, so I thought I'm going to try and recreate all the settings because you could see the exact settings of his amp and his stuff. So I sat down with the Fractal and I got out my Zen Drive pedal and I kind of set everything exactly like it and posted this video of my findings, And some guy comes on there and goes, "I can do Robin Ford way better than you." I was like, good for you. And then
so that's all I said. I did great as well.
Yeah, and so I just let it go, and then he came back and he said some other comment, and I was just like, and then he replied back again and said, "Loads of videos on my channel. Go check them out." And so I ignored it, and then he put a link, and I thought, okay, let's go and have a look. Right, some dude, American dude in his 60s. Couldn't play for shit. Didn't sound anything like Robin Ford. Didn't sound like that pedal show Robin Ford, which was the whole point I was trying to do.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. I said, but you do realize I was talking about that pedal show, not general, And he came back and he goes, "You don't know what you're talking about." And got all angry. So I'm like, delete. I haven't blocked him yet because I'm hoping he'll come back.
Drive that engagement up, baby. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we occupy such a tiny niche that actual idiots are quite a small percentage, but it's quite a small percentage, maybe not a massive number. It's not like if you ever tried to watch the live stream with the comments on of cricket on the internet.
Oh, I could imagine.
Wow, dude, it's amazing, right? And it doesn't matter. It will be I don't know, a league game in southwestern Australia, and there'll be 600 people on there who are just like, Virat Kohli is the king of the universe, and ha ha ha, Pakistan are losers, and then a bunch of people being like, no, India are losers, and Babar Azam is the GOAT kind of thing. And you're like, is this just where people hang out to just hang shit on each other about cricket? That's such a gigantic monolithic thing, and you're like, wow, actually the one nasty comment I get every 3 months on YouTube, nothing compared to this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting with their comments too. You alluded to it earlier, is that I don't think when people are commenting on there, it is about you at all. It's 100% about the person making the comment.
Yeah,
it's like the amount of times someone says, "Oh, I think this." Thank you. I didn't ask, but
yeah,
thank you.
I mean, you guys,
and I'm sure you must get that right.
You guys have both done the gear review thing. I'm convinced that the majority of people who watch it are people seeking validation for something they've just bought or already own.
Already bought it. Yeah.
And the people who get upset about it are the people who maybe, the way you dial something in and go, I don't really like that. They really like that about a piece of gear, and they're like, no. But that's how I use it, kind of thing, right? And you just sort of like, oh man, it doesn't matter. It's cool. You use it however you want. I'm just not into that personally, because look at the other videos on my channel. You can see clearly what I'm into. So yeah, that's always an interesting one. But yeah, it's the smart ass. I can do that. You just know they can't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a law of the universe. I have a joke with my friends about, we'll watch Aussie Rules football. And, I don't know, there'll be some player who's tearing up a game or something, and we'll just say, mate, one good preseason and we could be out there as well. Yeah. And we've been saying that for 18 years. So, I think the average retirement age is under 30 for most players. So that ship has long sailed.
Man, you want to see the best comments ever? Go and have a look at any UFC page or comment like that kind of stuff, because those dudes are angry anyway.
Yeah.
And yet they some of the comments on there, I left one comment once and it got 10,000 replies to it, and I didn't read any of them, and it wasn't actually me, it was two other dudes arguing with each other.
Wow.
It was hilarious. It's up there with the flat earthers. If you want to leave a comment on a flat earth video, and you'll get the same thing.
Well, they got fans all around the world.
I may be showing my age, but I remember late 90s, early 2000s, I logged on to the site called Harmony Central. And for me, it was the greatest thing in the world because I didn't really have my hands on a ton of gear. So I could like suddenly read all these reviews. And then I kind of started figuring out, like, you know, not everyone may have a good handle on, you know, whether this piece of gear actually does what I want it to do, you know. They use it their ways. So like right then I kind of figured out, okay, these gear reviews are, you know, you got to go through them and take your time to figure it out. Then we got into the forums where, you know, people were communicating with each other. And like there was a bunch of people who would just, you know, spew hate and negativity and everything like that. So, okay, fine, that's all good. And then we started doing these jams, you know, like someone would post a backing track and each of us would take a crack at, you know, different sections, so maybe 20 seconds at a time. And we had like a forum jam, you know, everyone playing.
That's cool.
And I found out like these guys who were like, you know, spewing hate and shit, they never took part in that. They would
exactly.
like not want to post their playing for whatever reason. But then, you know, you could figure like, okay, these guys are just here to, you know, whatever, get some shit off their chest or whatever. But the guys who could actually play would, you know, post more about music and talk about like, you know, what's cool about a piece of gear rather than, you know, bagging it or Mesa Boogies suck or whatever. You know, there'll be guys who get a good sound out of it, and, you know, like not everyone is made for every single piece of gear. So you kind of figure, oh, this works for me, this doesn't, this is cool, this is not. And, you know, you sift through a bunch of stuff. And then I was lucky to actually get my hands on those pieces of gear. And then, you know, looking back at all the information that you read about something and you're like, no, that's not exactly how, like, and then you find out something cool about it, which, you know, someone else may have missed or whatever. Like the SD9, like 100 people like, it's a shit pedal, I can't get a good sound out of it. And then you figure, okay, they're using it wrong. They're putting all the knobs to new. No, don't do that. So,
the tone control's got to be down,
like,
doesn't it?
That's another thing with even YouTube videos, because you can now hear what something sounds like, but you can't really tell what it feels like to your fingers till you get it in your hands and try it out. So there is no real substitute for trying it out, as much as you know, YouTube videos and gear reviews are a great resource. You have to kind of learn how to make them work in your favor. Like when I got my H3000, I saw Leon's video, and then I was like pausing it like every 20 seconds and like, you know, trying to get the same sounds. And like, oh, I still have like maybe 3 or 4 of those sounds that I programmed just from watching the video. Like I still use them every single day.
That's cool.
You know? So that's like one great thing about having that resource available to you. Yeah. Sorry, I went off on a rant there.
No, it's cool. I also love the, you know, and we all are this person sometimes, and we all know these people where there's something about music and music gear in particular that attracts that sort of, I just want the best person, right? You know, like, no, I got to have the best. So you can be doing a video, hey, the SPX 90, there's a really fun unit, you know, it does one effect at a time. It's got a few cool presets, but man, those presets are classic and they're really cool. And someone's like, yeah, here's 15 reasons why the SPX 90 sucks and why the H3000 is superior. And you're like, that's cool, man, but like, we're not having that discussion right now. You know, we're just sharing some fun stuff. Or and so much of it, I guess, is just like the recycling of talking points
off the internet
and over again and over and over again, where it's, you know, you go and look up Fractal and there'll always be someone who's like, yeah, but it's not a real amp. You're like, yeah, bro, this person's asking like where to set the low cut in a reverb, you know? That's not the point. Or you know, the thing about like modern strats is, you know, like you can't have a humbucker in a strat because it's just not right. You're like, but I mean, you can, and people do. Or 3 P90s on a PRS. The thing about PRS is like Gibsons are better, you know.
I just had a dude do that the other day. I borrowed a friend's 63 Strat, and it's got a 12-inch radius and jumbo frets, and he has 11s on it. And someone came on there on my YouTube channel and said, "Oh, you know, it's no longer a 63. It's you know, it's you've ruined it or whatever." And it's like, it fucking plays great. The thing sounds killer, and now it doesn't choke out, and it feels, you know, it was the best Strat I've ever played. Period.
The reason a lot of people would want a Sunburst 60 Strat was probably Stevie Ray Vaughan. You look at the radius on the Stevie Ray Vaughan signature; it's bloody 12 inches.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, exactly. The oh man, what came up? I think when I was in Noosa, something came up about red strats, right? And I think a lot of people just, go, well, red strats are cool, but like red strats are cool for a very specific reason, right? And it's Hank Marvin and it's the shadows, right? And I was, you talk about influence. I'm sure the Stevie Ray thing, that like he directly has such a massive influence on so many people. But the Hank Marvin thing's like really interesting, where all my favorite players wanted to play guitar because of the shadows.
Yeah.
And they sound nothing like, and then they got into blues and everything else, but that was like the gateway drug, and it's a red Strat, which was like not a common thing, right? It would have been the equivalent of, so anytime I see people like, oh man, 8-string guitars and multi-scale, and you're like, bro, it's like, how do you think people felt when the Shadows came out and there's this guy with giant horn-rimmed glasses on playing a red Stratocaster and he's English?
Yeah.
You can't go and get them. It's just not possible, like, the Clapton thing with Les Pauls is like, oh, cool, no one wants these. They weren't successful. And then suddenly there's demand. And then, the way that gets amplified over time, where it's like Clapton and then Gary Moore, and then I guess nowadays guys like Joe Bonamassa, and it's like people directly want these cool things because of them. But you go back to the root of it, and it's like, oh, it was just a cheap, convenient thing.
Totally. And it's interesting, isn't it, that how often the gear market is geared around what someone else is playing, that someone that they look up to. Do you know what I mean? What did I see the other day? Gibson are putting out another Jimmy Page acoustic guitar.
Yeah, and it's like $15 million.
And they'll sell all of them, because you'll have those blues rock lawyers and dentists and those kinds of people who will go, I got to have that guitar because Jimmy Page plays it. And the gear industry is so much around that, isn't it?
I heard a fun fact about Jimmy Page and, the reunion, the Celebration Day Zeppelin thing they did. So, he was playing orange amps on it. And he had to cover the logos because, where were they playing? The arena that they were playing. Yeah. O2, right? There's a rival phone company called Orange.
Yeah.
So
of course.
So they're like, you have to cover it, otherwise, because you're kind of indirectly advertise. I mean, it's an amp company that has nothing to do with it, which is, so if you watch those videos, you see the stickers over the amps, which, I mean, every guitar player knows they're orange amps, but there's that level of like, in 20 years, someone's going to be like, the real secret of Jimmy Page covering the logo to get that Celebration Day tone. And you're just like, I mean, we joke about it now, but, I guarantee someone's probably already done that video on it. So, yeah, it's that. I mean, at the same time, it's like the Hendrix thing, right? Where everyone gets into Jimi Hendrix at some point and they realize, man, this guy's a genius and, so important. But the whole time you're out there thinking about, I don't know, Robin Ford or Stevie Ray Vaughan or something, there's still a whole bunch of people who are just so into Hendrix, like it's never going away, or Jimmy Page. There's always that, I forget sometimes that these are the foundational things that make electric guitar.
Yeah.
And that's never going away. It's crazy, isn't it? To think like 50 years from now, it'll still be Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Page, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, interesting, isn't it?
I started playing like around 1984, and that time like the biggest guitar player in the world was Eddie Van Halen, and that striped guitar still is so bloody iconic, and the thing is like also like you see Eddie with the humbucker in the Strat, and he was one of the first people to popularize it. I'm sure people would have done it before him, but like that made such a huge difference. Oh, you can do that with a Strat, and it doesn't have to sound like all wimpy and everything like that.
And we're all his pedals true bypass. Come on.
It's interesting hearing the stories that come out as well, where it's like, he'd get to a show and I don't know, it was like an outdoor show, so it's really hot, so he'd swap the neck with something else.
Okay.
Just the number of, there's so many, that concert, he'd swap the neck for this other thing, there's some other thing, and you just sort of like, where are people reading this? And I also think what's funny about someone like Eddie as well is like, he knew from early on he would just drop nuggets that were just not true. Yeah, talking to a magazine, he'd be like, I use this guitar. Yeah. And the next interview would be like, no, I use this guitar. So people are like, what is it? It's like, well, you will actually never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when people are like, oh, it's actually the Destroyer on Van Halen 1, or it's a mod, you know, he had his Marshalls modded, or they were totally stock, or, you know, you're just like, I like this stuff, but sometimes it takes the fun out of it, you know?
Yeah,
you just want to put
and the whole chase for the brown sound, isn't it? You know, it's like, great, but...
You know, all the guys chasing that sound...
It was him.
All the guys chasing that sound, the guys who actually sound the closest are the guys who have the same kind of attack like him.
Yes.
You know, and they know how to dial the right amount of gain and, you know, the extra reverb and delay and all that stuff. But, like, it's down to the bloody touch that you know, generates the sound. I mean, we've all gone to that place, like, where you've got a sound going on, and you know if you hit it one way, it's going to sound horrible. But if you hit another way, it sounds great. And then that's what you're going to go for. You're not going to make it sound horrible.
Yeah.
Did you see that Rhett Scholl video the other day where he was talking about how tone is in the hands, and he disagreed with that? And he was saying, you know, he got a Mustang guitar and he played a sound, and then he flicked a switch and said, see, this tone is different because it's clearly in the guitar. And I was going to leave a comment. I was so tempted to just say, yeah, but your hand pushed the switch. I was like, no, don't start that.
It's also, I mean...
Gear does matter. Don't get me wrong,
I mean, but also those kind of questions are unanswerable because of the vagaries of, like, the language being used, you know?
Yeah.
Does gear matter? Well... Yeah, of course. And, like, of course the way someone plays matters, but it's not a, like, black and white, or it's not like a binary. Like, it's, you know, at what level does it matter and at what level does it not matter? And also, and I'm sure you guys have done your fair share of teaching, but, like, I think it's really, really easy to overestimate how much someone who's gigging regularly ever really cares about their guitar sound. Like... You just, at the end of the day, like, you kind of, all the things that go into playing live or doing a session, you kind of don't give a shit, you know? Because you probably have spent enough time, 20, 30, maybe more years, learning your sound. So it's more about, like, I know what I like and what I don't like. And I know if I've got my stuff, it's pretty much going to sound close. So in that, like, the care's been taken care of. You've prepared. I think that's more... you know, more what it's about, and, like, knowing that you've got the tools to do the job, and then being like, well, if I'm playing a small club with no PA, yeah, probably not going to sound like it is at Riverside Theatre through 2 JCM 800s or whatever you were using for that gig, Warren. It looked amazing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is also, I think with the experience comes the ability to know, you know, how to bend the gear to do what you wanted to do. Like with those amps, I was expecting it to have an effects loop, and I would have, you know, plugged into the return and yada yada. And suddenly I'm faced with these 2 JCM 800s with bloody no loop because they're original ones. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to plug into the low gain input, set the amp somewhat clean, and, you know, turn up the bass, and, you know, because I've done that before, so I kind of knew what to do with it. So, like, if you're used to doing things a certain way and you're faced with a situation where you can't do your normal thing, and then, you know, you kind of have to quickly decide how to make it work for you. So then that's what the years and years of playing teach you, which unfortunately you can't really condense into a YouTube video and say, this is the information you need. Or buy my course at, you know, that sort of thing. It's something that you just have to go through yourself and learn it that way, I think, at least. I mean, you can teach people a few hacks, like, okay, if this is what happens, this is what you do, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, the ability to move the knob and move the sound in real time to what you're hearing in your head, that's where it's at.
I remember some students asking once about reading gigs, you know, when I was at the uni, and I said, okay, well, and they said, well, what's it like when you get someone puts a piece of music in front of you and you have to play it, like, on the gig right then and there? And I said, well, in an ideal world, everything's perfect, but you really want to be prepared in case 2 of the pages blow away and you're on stage and you have to wing the last 2 pages of the chart is missing and that kind of stuff, and you can't teach anyone that kind of stuff, right? They just got to experience for themselves and figure out how to make it work. And there's no substitute for that, isn't there? Do you Do you teach much privately? Like, do you have do online lessons and things like that, Leon? Or?
Yeah, quite a bit. So that's been, the pandemic was good in that regard for me, where I think there was a lot of people sitting at home who suddenly had a whole bunch of spare time. So yeah, and I've still got some people I've been teaching for years now. I love it. It's because it's, I think there's certain things that teaching in person is so much better for, because if someone's trying to do something, you can just go like, no, see your middle finger, move it, put it there. But then I think the thing that I like, often I'm teaching people who are, intermediate players or even advanced players, where they hit you up and you're like, what do you need to talk to me for, dude? Like, you're amazing. It's a sort of like just being able to say, talk more generally about the concept level, and then go, okay, now go figure it out. Like, and I feel like that if there's one germ of information that's so important is, I did this Hendrix gig at the Noosa Guitar Festival, and sort of the only reason I agreed to do it was because the person organizing it was like, so we're not trying to do, it's not a tribute, right? We're going to play the songs, and they're great songs. And the whole point of going to see Hendrix live was it would be different every night, and it would be loose. We'll have a rehearsal the morning of the gig just to make sure, we're all stopping and starting at the same time. But solos are going to be called, if you're really into it, don't worry about playing over, just keep going. And that to me is like, oh, beautiful. This is the point. That's the point of that sort of music. If you were doing a reading gig for an orchestra, that's not the point of that gig. You don't just start improvising on a, Strat with giant frets through high gain. No, like you do the established thing for it. So yeah, I think that element of like, it's fairly straightforward when you're on a gig, like figuring out what the vibe is, right? Like, how much should I stick to it, or how much should I not stick to it? And a lot of the time, if you're playing rock music, it's like, yeah, it's kind of like that. But the point is that, you're going to play this song slightly different to the next guy, so go for it.
Yeah. Make it your own.
And have you ever done any courses or things like that available, teaching courses or that kind of stuff? Have you thought about that kind of avenue? Or?
Yeah, man, it's probably the last 5 years. I should just sit down and do a course on that. I've got a bunch of stuff up on my Patreon, and there was a teaching startup in, I think 2018 or 2019. I did some work with, and they got it off the ground, which was pretty amazing. And they wanted to get it basically into schools. And then like the pandemic happens, it was like, great, there's a perfect time where this is going to take off. And the person sort of running it was like, actually, this is not what I want to do with my life. So yeah, I had made a bunch of videos for that, which I just put up on my Patreon for anyone who wanted them. And there was some very basic stuff, like, how to strum an acoustic guitar. But yeah, so for the Patreon, every month I try to put up at least a couple of videos of like, hey, here's a weird thing that I do that you might be interested in. And I did have a series on YouTube, I think it was called like 5-minute licks, which was just, here's a really here's a Gary Moore lick, but like literally 6 notes,
Yeah.
And here's how he does it, and here's how you could do it. And I like that easily digestible chunk, which is really nice.
It's also easier for them to take that and run with it.
Yeah.
What I was thinking is, do you want to tell the audience about what you've got coming up or something like that, or any Ragdoll recordings around the corner or that kind of stuff to maybe to wrap it up and let us know what's happening with Ragdoll and yourself and your music and whatever else? Yeah,
good question. So like I said, we have a few shows coming at the end of the year. It's one of those things where I feel like we get out of the blue super busy, and then maybe not so busy. So like I said, I'm playing a show in Perth for 5.5, 6 weeks at the start of next year. We've got a couple of shows around that, just local stuff. And it's normally around this time of the year where I'm sort of like, okay, cool, I need to start looking at maybe booking some more stuff. So we try to do like the east coast of Australia at least once a year. That's for playing rock music in Australia. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane is a lot more happening than Perth. We did the Ingve tour in May. And played all of those places, which was wild. It was Spinal Tap. That's the easiest way put it forward, but they're probably the best shows we've ever played in Australia. Yeah, and other than that, I'm just sort of where my wife and I are actually moving next week, which is terrifying to think about. So, yeah, hopefully start putting together a transition from this space into a new space and make it all, you know, livable and still be able to do the video thing. I've just been sort of super inspired recently, making videos and talking about music that I love, you know. I think I'm totally going to blame Warren for this one, but something came up in my YouTube search bar. I think it was something you were playing something off Corridors of Power with the DS1. And then I just went on this is while I was in Sydney, I went on this huge Gary Moore thing. I went back and listened to all his rock era albums, and, you know, I was just like, oh my God, this guy's so amazing. You know what I mean? Like, so I've been going and relearning a bunch of that stuff and getting into that. The other thing for me as well is, like, I think I understand why, like, trem bars are cool now.
Me too. I've only just recently kind of I blocked them all off on every guitar until recently, and now I'm like, I want to wobble everything.
Because what if I break a string at a gig, you know? And then I'd realize, man, you've been saying this to yourself for 15 years. It's happened like 6 times total. Just let it float, and you can't get that David Gilmour vibrato really without it, which I think is the thing. Yeah,
and man, it must be about time you came to New Zealand, you know, and brought Ragdoll over or did something like that, you know. There's a pretty good rock and metal scene in Wellington. I don't know about in Auckland. I'm assuming there must be.
There's a couple of venues,
but
and if you need a Soldano,
there definitely is in Christchurch. So there's 3.
Well, there's a direct flight from Perth now, which I learned. I think it's only 6 hours to get there. So yeah, maybe we should talk. I'd love There's 2 places I would absolutely love to play in the world. One is anywhere in South America, but the other is in the subcontinent. Yeah, I feel like that would be. I have friends who are in a pretty big metal band here who recently went to India, and they just said it was like the hunger and the thirst for like guitar music, especially is you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, right, Warren? You know, you can probably say more about it.
I think you guys would go down really well there. So yeah, maybe if I can hook you up with the right people, that'll be awesome.
And then you could do a comparison between like India's curry and Warren's curry.
Yeah, and probably be like, you know what, Warren's is the best.
Mine's not even Indian. That's the thing. It's Malaysian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming and doing this.
Yeah,
it's always a pleasure to hang, my man.
We'd love to have you back whenever you.
My pleasure. You guys are 2 of my favorite guitar dudes out there. 2 of my favorite dudes, but also guitar dudes. So
just across the ditch.
Pleasure.
Too kind.
Exactly. All right, boys. Pleasure chatting.
Get you guys soon. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.
See ya.